Now, there's no mystery to what I'm talking about. The Unfinished Covenant is the Dark Moons. We all know it. I'm not playing as a Dark Moon in these clips. I'll be playing as a Blue Sentinel. The Blue Sentinel Covenant makes sense to me. On paper, it makes sense. In Dark Souls 3, after all the Ring City, Ariandel patches, the Blue Sentinel Covenant works pretty well. I will say. Much better than my experiences with it were in Dark Souls 2. At least in my opinion. This invader's a little bit parry happy, so I'm trying to feel him out for an in. But yeah, I will not be playing as a Dark Moon in these videos because I don't really understand the mechanics of the Dark Moon Covenant besides a couple of details that I talked about in some of these other blue videos. But the Blue Sentinels work. Okay, you have a host that's in trouble, you come in with your Covenant crest on at whatever summon range. Maybe you have a blue ally coming as well, since typically red players are better than blue players. I understand all that. You do your job, you leave. The Dark Moons probably have no business being in this game. They're here probably for lore reasons more than anything else. And they facilitate the same role as Blue Sentinels, which doesn't make sense. Now, if you played Dark Souls 1, you know how the Dark Moons went down. The Dark Moons in the first game were basically another invasion covenant. You had a blue eye orb, and you would hunt down other players that haven't beaten their bosses, just like any other invader, but you'd only invade hosts that had acquired sin through Indictments, which means they had invaded other players. I couldn't find this guy for a long time, and he ended up going back down into the Gank City land, so I didn't quite know what I was getting into. But yeah, the Dark Moons were very distinct in Dark Souls 1. The Blue Sentinels were very distinct in Dark Souls 2. In Dark Souls 3, the Dark Moon Covenant is just sort of there, and it doesn't really make sense. There's no sin system in Dark Souls 3, so the Dark Moons facilitate the same role as the Blue Sentinels. So what does that mean? Well, you either change your crest over and you have a different blue glow. At this point in the summon, I haven't even seen the red, so I kind of lay it on pretty thick with this Ultra Faithful. I just want him out of the way. I get rid of the skunk. I'm on autopilot. I'm not expecting him to die instantly. But back on topic, Dark Moons. You get a cool glow, and on occasion, if you fight an invader that's got the Ultra Faithful Covenant, you'll get double ears. That's how it's supposed to work. So it's Blue Sentinels Plus, which I think is kind of a throwaway, honestly. I think it could have done something a little bit more interesting with a couple of game mechanic changes. And it's kind of sad to me. I know the Sun Bros were controversial in this game because you can invade for Sun Medals, which sort of goes against the idea of a Summoner Covenant as we knew it in the first two games. I get that. But it was a little bit weird. The Mound Makers, of course, are a very versatile covenant as well. This host definitely has no interest in playing this level, and this hammer guy is taking me to task pretty hard with his Vortex hammer, frosting my flakes with the frost damage. And I don't have a alternate weapon to really use. I probably could switch out to Mirakumas, but I'm keen to fight him with my Store Sword. So we're well on each other, but he definitely makes me make mistakes that I have no intention of making. I definitely missed space a couple of attacks there. And now that I've shown him that I'm doing the weapon art, wait for that Cessus parry attempt, which I know is coming. I should roll out of that one. Anyway, the Dark Moons. Well, it's really close. So, what would I have rather had seen? Well, I feel like it's a waste. I feel like we could have had another Covenant idea in this game. You know, I'm not saying that letting the Dark Moons use the Red Eye Orb, just like the Mound Makers, just like the Sun Bros, would have been a good idea necessarily, just based on lore. You know, I'm sure that would have worked just as fine. I'm sure it just would have been easy to put in another sprite for blue orb, because they did have a black orb in this game, you know? So that could have been entered as well, and then maybe when you do that, you actually invade other invaders. And how would that work in Dark Souls 3, because there's no sin? Well, you don't want to do it with people who have tongues in their inventory, since you find them so frequently. And it's pretty easy to get them dropped from the Dark Area, so I think most players are apt to find at least one or two just casually playing the game, even if they have no interest in invading. But you do find a Dark Moon player list somewhere in the Church of Yorshka, so why wouldn't there be an indictment book as well that maybe some players could use after a certain point of the game and indict certain players? I think that would have been a great thing. So I'm in the Dried Fingered World as my luck build character here. This is a character I'm a little bit experimental with. I haven't really got a lockdown yet on how I'm planning on using luck. So this is going to be a rough one for me. And yeah, I do have a good fight though, but it's rather rough. Now, what was I saying? Yeah, Dark Moons. Okay, if we use the orb and we had an indictment book, I think it could have worked pretty well. You invade invader players the way you're supposed to be doing, the way it was supposed to be as a Dark Moon. And you could say, like, well, what if, you know, the invaders blow through the game and they beat all the bosses? Well, maybe in that rare instance would have been interesting to have an invasion situation where you can actually invade players that are kindled but have beaten their bosses. Dark Souls 2 had a very functional system for this, and people seem to like it. I think I would have been okay with that. I don't think invaders would have minded. I think invaders welcome PvP more than other players, so maybe if it was isolated to just those types of players, the community would have approached that a little better. You know, the Dark Moons in Dark Souls 1 also had a ring that they could wear that allowed them to do a territorial summon into the Sunless Anor Londo. Maybe an equivalent there could have been a nice little package. But I'd also say Bloodborne set some good precedents as well, you know, for the Covenants. If you remember in Bloodborne, if you were wearing a rune of a differing or an enemy faction, and you were summoned in with the Beckoning Bell, if it was determined that that host was an enemy player, you would actually come in as an adversary instead of an ally. I don't like that I have to use the Hornet Ring with this character. I usually only have the Hornet Rings nowadays for builds where I'm less enthused or less experienced and I'm still working things out. I'll use it as a crutch, and because I'm rocking hollow gems and bleed and poison gems with this character, I'm kind of using it as a crutch here. So while I do get a couple of parries on this guy, I don't feel good about it. And I'm definitely feeling the problem here, since I'm not able to proc him so well with the bleed and the poison, which is the whole point of this build. So because he's a good player and he's fighting me just well enough to not get procced, then I feel like I have to fall back on a Hornet Ring, which I don't like doing. But we are having a good fight. And he does parry me here, and he gets me with the poker, which is an odd choice. I don't know if that has some other effect that I don't know about. But, yeah, I'm not too sure what happens here. I goof up. I think I'm trying to get a lock on, and it's not happening. And he gets me with the curved sword. But that was a good fight. I very much liked fighting that Falcon Knight player with the Falcon Shield. I have another chance to redeem myself here with my luck build in Gang City again. I don't know if this is a fight club in the making here or what's going on, but this red's kind of hesitant to throw down with me. But yeah, basically, a situation like that, maybe integrated into Dark Souls 3 with the rival factions, maybe on a summon situation would have been interesting. You know, I don't know. I feel like the Dark Moons exist for no reason besides maybe showing up in a host game as a Dark Moon, giving that host and maybe the invader some impression that you're more elite than a regular blue. You know, the hapless blue Sentinels. I don't know if that was just just something. I did detail that in one of my earlier videos for being better blues, where, you know, if you come into a game with another blue, and that blue is a blue sentinel and you're a dark moon, you sort of have a responsibility to represent yourself better. And I still believe that's the case, but, you know, this far into the game's life cycle, you know, I don't think invaders care. And I think invaders see a blue and they think the same thing either way, and I don't think hosts notice whether or not it's a sentinel or a dark moon so much anymore. They just want help. But yeah, it's just a very strange covenant. You know, even Dark Souls 1 had covenants that seemed to go nowhere or serve little purpose outside of some lore. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think might have been a good alternative to what we got. You know, thinking about Elden Ring down the road, if we're gonna have covenants or a similar system. You know, I'd rather have all our bases covered with functional covenants across the board, you know. But yeah, let me know what you think would have been better for Dark Souls 3 with the Dark Moons. I'd like to hear it.